Why, yes, I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Live from Little Rock, it's Shane Plays Geek Talk, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. Thanks so much for listening. Whether you're listening live on Saturday, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. Hope you're wearing your green. If you're listening live on Saturday, March 17th at 1 p.m. Central on 96.5 FM, The Answer, over the radio or online at 96.5fmtheanswer.com. Just glad you're here. And, of course, if you're listening by podcast or on the rebroadcast on Krypton Radio, I'm so glad you're here. I love all my listeners and community, whether it's by the live radio show or the podcast, because I love both formats. In fact, I was on Dave Ellswick. I'm in his studio right now on The Answer, 96.5 FM, which that frequency is about to change. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. I was on the live show yesterday with Dave, with Mitch Breitweiser and Timothy Lim, both comic book professionals. Tim, I know you listen a lot. If you're listening out there, you and your buddies on your way having fun on your normal Saturday where you end up at Kapow Comics. What's up, man? Today is a gaming show, but you should listen anyway. Tim's always like, I love your show, but man, sometimes I tune in and it's gaming. Man, I got to do all the geek stuff, but I will get some comic books news on and topics on it. I'm hoping to get a colorist on and talk just about coloring and not coloring, but the colorist part of comic books. And Tim's going to help me with that. And I got a couple other people I'm thinking about. But anyway, Tim, if you're listening, you and your buddies, hope you all have a good Saturday. And Tim's always a great guest too. He's a great comic book artist. Okay. So this is a live show. 501-823-0965 is the number to call. That's 501-823-0965. Or you can tweet me at Shane Plays, and I'll do my best to work your comments or questions into the live show. And you can always tweet me at any time, and, I appreciate your feedback. So my guest today is a role-playing game designer game show. My guest is Mike Myler, who has a couple of interesting things going on in his life right now. But what we're going to be talking about today, he has a setting, a 5e setting, which means it's compatible with Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. And he has a Kickstarter coming to add material and an adventure and some stuff like that. So, Mike, are you with me, buddy?
I am. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, man, it's cool. We've talked a little bit here and there, and you reached out, and I was glad to hear from you. And I think this will be fun to talk about. One of the powerful aspects, I guess, of D&D in recent years is that they do the open gaming license and the SRD, and they allow people to use portions of their game engine legally and produce content that's compatible. So that's what we are going to be talking about today. So give us a really quick, give us the real quick introduction to your setting. And then I've got some show notes that we'll go over, and then we'll talk further later in the show more deep about your setting and the Kickstarter that you're doing.
Sure. Just to clarify, the open gaming license was I think in like 2000 or 2001 when like 3rd edition of D&D came out. And the thing about it is that when you talk about game mechanics, you can't actually copyright a game mechanic.
Right.
You can only copyright the terminology used with the game mechanic. So, like, in order to make a Dungeons and Dragons that does not somehow have a connection to the OGL, they'd have to change what they call the wizard, and they'd have to change what they call the rogue,
right,
and so on and so forth. So, like, Wizards of the Coast doesn't really have an option to ignore the OGL, right?
Right. But they officially put a venue out. They did.
They put out a new systems reference document to support for 5th edition.
Right.
A couple of months, or I think it might have been over a year after the actual books came out.
Yeah. So and they did that with 3rd edition, and then they did it with 5th edition. I blinked and 4th edition was come and gone. I didn't have did they have an OGL or an SRD?
They had a gaming systems licensing agreement that was very different and more restrictive, and it originally had like I want to say like a $3,000 buy-in.
Okay. Oh, wow. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was. They took a very hardline approach, and it resulted differently.
I think what they're doing, and it's smart, Like Google does so much free for the internet because a healthy internet that people want to use lifts Google's boat as well. So I hopefully that's the approach that Wizards of the Coast has had with D&D, because it has increased the health of the tabletop RPG ecosystem, if you will. But that's not here what we're talking about today.
Yeah, I could talk about it for hours.
Yeah.
There's definitely two parties over there, and one is Hasbro and one is game designers, and it's interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, corporate versus the passionate. So real quick, what is tell us real quick about your setting? Mist of Akuma. Okay.
Yeah. Eastern fantasy noir steampunk, like in that order. So think
cool.
Edo era Japan. So like right around when America like showed up there in the 1850s. Plus Ravenloft and Warhammer 40,000, or the Afro Samurai anime, plus the Onimusha game, plus Sin City.
Fun.
And
yeah.
So it's really cool.
So at first glance, and I wanted to spell an assumption. At first glance, somebody might think that you're doing basically an updated Oriental Adventures, which was one of the source books for AD&D back in the day. That's not what this is.
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people have asked, like, oh, is there a way to do this without the steampunk? And when we first made the world, we specifically designed it so you can pull the steampunk out.
Okay.
So one of the free PDFs with this Kickstarter has like a little sidebar that gives you bullet points on like, ignore this, take these prefectures out. They're all in the corners of the map, so it's not hard.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. Well, we'll talk a little bit more. I'm going to do some show notes. We'll do a news segment. Today I've picked out RPG related news. I try to find news that relates to the topic and the guest of the day. And then we'll talk more about Mist of Akuma. Is it Akuna or Akuma? Let me make sure I'm saying Akuma,
which is
like Akuma Matata, but not.
Like, that's Hakuma Matata.
Oh, okay.
Akuma is a name of a very popular Street Fighter character, and also my Japanese is very sloppy, but it kind of means demon in Japanese.
Okay. Yeah, and it's the artwork I've seen, is this adventure you're doing, this Imperial Matchmaker, can be pretty hardcore. So, okay. Well, that sounds cool. I'm looking forward to learning more. People come along for the ride, and we will be talking about a very cool addition to the 5e world that you can play in. So with Mr. Mike Myler, we've also got a cool announcement that we'll talk about here in a second about Mike and EN World and the Insider. So we'll talk about that here in a second as well. I got some quick show notes to get through here. One, this is live. Right now is live, but if you're listening by podcast or on Krypton Radio, then the notes for today's shows will be up at shaneplays.com, and that's ShanePlays.com. Last week's show is out by podcast, and you can find it on the blog at shaneplays.com or in the other venues. And that was indie game dev Matthew Weymouth, video game developer, and Tenacity Online, which is the MMORPG for the role player, which was pretty interesting. And that was where he envisions every character, no matter how large or small in the game, will be played by an actual person. And there was a lot of other cool stuff in there. So if you're into MMOs, definitely go check that out. This is a podcast after the live show, and then we go out at the blog at shaneplays.com. I put it up on the YouTube channel at I think it's youtube.com/GoShanePlays, but just look for Shane Plays on YouTube. I put all kinds of videos out there beyond just the radio show stuff. It's iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, and more. And last, but never, ever, ever least, Shane Plays is carried on Krypton Radio. Krypton Radio is SciFi for your Wi-Fi. KryptonRadio.com. Gene Turnbow and folks do a great job over there. Shane Plays sponsor Arkansas RPG Con 2018. Mike, where are you physically located geographically?
I'm in Pittsburgh, actually, but my sister lives down there near you. I just texted her the radio.
Oh, cool.
Station.
Yeah, well, what you need, if you can, schedule a trip to come see your sister in September. No, it's August. In August, because the second annual Arkansas RPG Con will be in Maumelle, Arkansas, which is the Little Rock metro area, basically, in August. And those badge sales are now open. Vendor and sponsorship options are also open. Go to arpgcon.com for more info, and make sure to follow Arkansas RPG Con on Facebook. Now, Mike, I know you're busy, but all joking aside, if you wanted to run a Mist of Akuma game at this con, that would be amazing. We like to have a good mix of OSR and new gaming. So, and it was well attended last year, and it's only growing. So be a lot of fun to have you there if it happened to work out. All right. And then Heroes and Angels Comic-Con is coming April 28th, 10 to 4 p.m. at the Greenbrier Event Center in Greenbrier, Arkansas. Heroes and Angels Comic-Con. You don't want to miss this. Tons of activities for the kids, special guests, and free admission. Donations will be accepted. All proceeds go to Heroes and Angels, a nonprofit organization that provides assistance to families affected by childhood cancer and to military families in need. If you remember Heroes and Angels, folks, but I did that show a few months ago on the fraudster, Malcolm Fledge, and that's not his real name, who ran a con here in both senses of the word and ended up running off with a lot of people's money. He took off with money that Heroes and Angels Comic-Con was supposed to get. So, our Heroes and Angels, the organization, was supposed to get. So support this Comic-Con on April 28th, 10 to 4 p.m. at Greenbrier Event Center in Greenbrier, Arkansas. And we're welcoming back a previous sponsor, Mike Tennell, and the Little Rock Comic-Con is on May 19th. They're celebrating their 10th year. So it's going to be great, and I think we're going to start running an official ad for them next week. But remember, May 19th, the Little Rock Comic-Con will be at the Benton Event Center, and with Mike Tennell running the show. So, all right, I got to do something real quick, Mike. If I don't banter with my engineer, Zach, then the head of my news team, Sal, his grandmother and her dog, Muffin, they get mad at me. I get nastygrams, I get emails. We think they may have sabotaged the transmitter one time. We're not sure. The Mobley Detective Agency is researching that even as we speak. So I'm going to banter with Zach, but you are welcome to join in on this banter as well, Mike. So anything on the show, my guests, that's why I like to have the guests along for the whole time, is to have some fun. Now, Zach.
What's up?
All right. So Dave told me yesterday, I want to start getting this word out there as soon as possible, that I guess right now the answer is 96.5 FM.
Yes.
But starting in a few weeks, we're going to be on 101.1. Is that correct?
At some point in April.
Okay.
Not sure, but
is that 101.1?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's a better signal.
Yes.
Okay. So this is good. So folks, sometime in April, and we'll get the word out. We're still going to be the answer.
Right.
But we'll be 101.1 because Salem, this is a Salem station here in Little Rock, bought 101.1.
Exactly.
And I guess we'll hit Morrilton and Conway really better. And I know some people can kind of listen to Conway right now, but that's good.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Once we get over the initial turbulence of station, that's going to be better for everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good. That's fantastic. So I don't know where Sal's grandmother and her dog Muffin listen from. I don't know if they listen online. I don't know if they're local. But if you're in Conway or the expanded listening area, maybe that'll make them happy. I don't know.
So.
Yeah, I don't know. So the other thing I was going to let you know, today is St. Patrick's Day. Did you wear green, Zach?
I have green in my backpack.
You have green in your backpack. So as long as you got the backpack slung over your shoulder, nobody can pinch you.
Yep, it's a box of gum.
Box of gum. Well, no, that's not wearing green.
It's green.
Mike, I need a ruling on this one.
I don't know. If you brandish it around like a weapon, maybe.
Maybe? Okay. Well, I'm not green with envy over the green that you have today. Mike, do you have green on today? Or if you leave your domicile, will you wear green to prevent being pinched?
Oh, golly. I actually, I have like a elven armor shirt. That's got some green on it.
You're
I'll wear
good.
that.
You are good. Armor in both senses of the word. I do not have any green on today. So I'm hoping that nobody notices. I got to stop by the comic book store and I'm going to get the new Green Lantern Earth 1 card cover, so maybe that'll count. But
brandish it around like a weapon.
I'll brandish it like a weapon. Yeah. All right. The other thing, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, Zach, during the day at the end of the Dave Ellswick show. Avengers: Infinity War already set records on pre-sales on tickets.
I thought you guys were joking.
No, it's 6 hours. 6 hours to set the record.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and Black Panther had said it before, and then Marvel just can't go wrong right now.
But isn't that something to be expected? I mean, you got so many characters
it's just wow. Because there was a lot of stuff in the mix pushing Black Panther too.
Exactly.
But but Marvel is pure geek.
Right.
It's just pure geek. That's all. Right.
I wouldn't say that at all. Marvel's been broadening its brand for a long time.
Well, no, it has. It has converted people into Marvel geeks, no doubt.
Yeah, you can't go on anything without finding Marvel something, like a Marvel cartoon or Marvel Netflix series, or Marvel mugs in the Target store or Bath and Beyond.
Yeah, Target has like
a
whole geek section now with all kinds of cool Marvel stuff in it. But I guess I do take your point, Mike. I guess what I'm saying is Black Panther had the Marvel geek superhero plus a lot of social stuff behind it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, this is amazing. Mm-hmm. We're setting a bunch of firsts here or whatnot. We have this whole African kingdom. And the Infinity War is just straight up superhero geek, right? But I guess Wakanda features in it, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud and flapping my lips, which is what I do best. There may or may not be any merit whatsoever to what I say.
I was talking to Owen Casey Stevens the other night, and he's really happy. He's like, man, when I was a kid, it was like, Bargrok the Barbarian 2 is out at Blockbuster. Yep. That's my Saturday night. And compared to now, it is much better.
Dude, I didn't even have Bogrok. I was in the 80s, man. I mean, dude, we had nothing. I mean,
that's what he was talking about.
Yeah, it was, we had some, but back then you took social blast to the gut if you were a geek. I mean, that's just all there was to it. There was no cool geek chic at all. So, but anyway, it is what it is. So, Bogrok the Barbarian, I'm going to go rent those. Bogrok the Barbarian. All right. And then lastly, speaking of animated stuff everywhere, like Mike pointed out, I saw a news story today that on the Marvel YouTube channel, they have a lot of good content on there. The Black Panther animated series from 2011 that Marvel did in conjunction with BET can now be watched in its entirety.
That's right.
Okay. Is that the motion comic or is that something different?
It's a motion comic, but it also has some animation mixed in. So it is a motion comic, but it's also got times of actual animation.
If it's the one I'm thinking of, that was really good. That's what they're doing the weird stuff with the veterans.
I'm not positive. I remember seeing trailers for it, but I never actually got to watch it. But I want to watch it because the trailers were great when I saw them back in the day. Okay, so we bantered. I hope that bought me another week of reprieve from Sal's grandmother and her dog Muffin. Let's speaking of Sal, I saw him earlier today. He had his fedora on. He was chomping a cigar. Let's turn on the microphone in the super secret newsroom there. There they go. The news team working hard on a Saturday. Folks, remember, for every $1 of Patreon support that the show gets, the news team gets a penny an hour raise. So it's a win-win. And I did see that Sal was wearing green. Not that I would pinch him anyway. I've already got enough trouble with his grandmother and her dog Muffin. Okay. First news item of the day. This is from EN World. Somebody named Mike Myler is the new Insider editor. You want to tell us anything about that there, Mike?
Yeah.
The Insider is... tell us about the Insider and then what you're doing there.
It's Patreon, and Patreons are essentially periodicals. And EN5ider focuses on producing articles for use with Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Some of them are just articles. Some of them are new stuff to play as. Some of them are new monsters. Some of them are adventures. And we release 5 a month. And I'm now in charge of commissioning and editing them.
Well, that's exciting. Now, how did that come about? Do you mind kind of sharing that with us? Or?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Morris started EN5ider 2 or 3 years ago, I think. And I've written maybe 15 articles for him. And I knew they were looking for an editor. And I almost didn't send an application because I had kind of gotten into a little bit of a tiff with him
really?
The week before.
Okay.
Yeah, but I've worked with him a lot, and I know that I can get away with saying stuff.
Well, Morris seems like I've talked to him a lot on Twitter. He's been on the show. He seems like a pretty mature, forgiving guy, I would say. He's
very real.
He doesn't seem to be petty. Yeah.
No, he's not petty at all. Yeah, that's kind of why I'm happy I sent the application. I get to work with him regularly now.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, I'd written something like 15 or 17 articles for them, so I was a regular on the periodical already. And there was an editing test that I blew out of the water. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the bribe didn't hurt. The little you slipped some euros in an envelope, right?
I don't have enough money to bribe.
Oh, okay.
Certainly not bribe Morris. He definitely has a nice thing going on with the EN world.
Well, that was a trick question anyway. Of course, you wouldn't bribe Morris, but you can bribe me if you want. Did I say that on the air? Oh, I didn't say. I said you can jibe me. You can jibe me with clever jibes. That's what I said. Okay, so real quick, there'll be a news article linked on the Shane Play show notes, but you can go to EN World, which is one of the best, if not the best, resource for RPG news out there. Morris does a great job. And there's an article that says, welcoming Mike Myler, the new Insider editor. Insider is spelled with a 5 because they're playing off of the 5th edition, because it's content for 5th edition, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Although I believe if you type it out, it's like in the URL bar, it'll be EN5ider.
Oh, okay. All right. They're up to 200 issues, and there's 1,200 patrons. So something good's going on here. And if I remember right, I think he's going to do something similar for Pathfinder, but maybe I'm making that up in my head.
He has one called Trail Seeker for Pathfinder, and then there's one called Aeons for the What's Old is New RPG, which is an original RPG from EN World that I wrote the middle of.
Oh, did you? Okay, well, that's what I had him on the show about, was we talked about wine.
I sold him on doing one for like 1980s action movies called Now, and it goes in the middle of old and new.
Well, okay, so we talked about that. I just didn't make the connection. Yeah, we talked about that on the show. But yeah, we talked about where EN World came from and wine and all that stuff. So, folks, again, I mean, really go check out EN World. And I mean, support Morris and Mike and what they're doing. It's a great resource for RPGs. So, in fact, I've done a lot of stuff with Shane Plays that I thought was cool, and nobody blinks an eye. If I get mentioned on EN World, people are, dude, you're on EN World. So, I mean, it's got cred. It's got straight.
And if you're a designer or an artist, you should definitely try to work for EN World through the Patreons, because it's a really sweet deal. The payment's not bad. You get your rights back if you're the writer after about a year, so you can sell it yourself again if you want to.
That's great.
It's unheard of in the RPG industry.
No, that's what I'm saying. Morris isn't trying to take it. He's trying to help the community overall. So good on you both. All right, this next one could be controversial, but I'm not bringing it up for any controversial reason. I want to talk about it purely for the interesting from the game stuff. Came out a couple of days ago, and comicbook.com and some other places have run a thing on Dungeons and Dragons is to introduce gender fluidity in Elves. And actually, it looks like Comic Book has changed their headline to Sexfluidity, because, a lot of people will say that gender is different from biological sex. But the point is, Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, which is coming out in a few months, and a lot of people are very interested in, if I understand correctly, the drow will now have a subset that after any long rest, if you choose to be that subset of the drow race, then you can choose whether you're male or female, or neither, based on your mood or feeling. Now, there are people who will argue for or against this outside of the game, right? Like, why are you doing this? Da, da, da. And I even have my opinion on it, but that's not what I'm bringing it up for on this show. From a game mechanic perspective, it is interesting that they're doing it as the drow, because the drow in the Forgotten Realms have a matriarchal society. So if you choose to be a woman, that gives you an advantage in that society. And the drow, if they discover that you're a subtype of this, because the drow is already a subrace of the elves, so now you're a subtype of the subrace. If they find out that you're one of these, they will try to kill you, because they know that you could take advantage of the situation. So as a D&D player, as a DM or a GM or whatever, what first had you heard about this, Mike, and what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, I applaud their efforts to include more diversity in the game. Right. But I mean, codifying it as a mechanic is foolish and a bad idea. Okay. It should be part of the game. I have a gender fluid race in Miss Akuma.
Okay.
I have gender fluid characters in all my books. Actually, I make a point of being diverse in my books. But like making it a mechanic has a lot of implications. There was a magic item from an earlier edition.
Yeah, the belt
where you put the belt
gender.
on.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, and ultimately that became stopped being a regular magic item, became a cursed magic item because it enforces a choice. And yeah, I don't know. I'm not gender fluid, but I feel like if I was, I'd be
upset about this.
Not pleased.
Okay.
And moreover, just Drow in general, we can do better than Drow. Like we need to have a better, and they're the predominant fantasy representation of Black people, and it's not cool.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like they're kind of a cool race, and like I think Drow can be neat and stuff, but like we can do better than that, and we really should.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, my guess is back in the day when Gary Gygax came up with Drow, and the Drow, as we know them in D&D, were not. There were dark elves in like Norse mythology and other, but they were just more of like a dwarf kind of race. This concept of a dark elf, of subterranean elf race, is Gary Gygax purely came up with it for D&D. I don't know if he meant it as a metaphor for, I
don't think so, but I mean, when I try to imagine like, okay, what if I'm like a 7-year-old, whatever the thing, I am not looking through the cultural lens of already.
Right.
Is there anything in this game that I would identify with? And like the only thing they're really left with is Drow. Right. And it's,
I got you. Okay.
We can do better.
Well, 5th edition, in their art has made huge strides to try to be, like the warrior in 5th edition, is not your typical Conan, the main in the player's handbook or whatever. So, but anyway, I guess
it has real armor too.
Yeah, real armor. So, So anyway, I guess the game reason for this is they're saying that the big themes of Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes is the concept of the elves were once a mutable race. Their creator, Corellon Larathion, and I don't know if I'm saying that right, was an androgynous being, and elves could originally change their forms at wills. Although
that was from one of the 1986 books. Was it?
Okay. And then although they eventually lost this ability with the descent of the material plane, this will lead. I'm not going to land either way on the political. I strive. I'm very political and whatever socially in my real life. On Shane Plays, I fail sometimes, but I try to keep that up, and I just try to make it a fun show. This will lead to interesting things, is all I'm going to say. There will be discussions. That's all I'm going to say. But it's interesting.
Better that it exists than it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, I will say that it's interesting that they chose the Drow to do it because, again, if you're a female in Drow society, that gives you advantage. So there's interesting game things that could come out of this. All right. Enough on this. The other thing, and I don't want to spend much time on this, I want to get us to a break so we can talk about your stuff, is I had a news item here that was also from Ian World, and for some reason, here it is. Morris actually did an article, and then he updated it. There was some information. Jeremy Crawford, who's the lead rules guy for D&D 5e, mentioned that most D&D players prefer what race? Did you read this article?
It was humans, wasn't it?
Yeah, humans, and not only humans, but without feats. So not even the alternate human. So that's pretty interesting stuff. And he did do an update. Let me see. Yeah, update. Jeremy Crawford dropped me a note with some clarifications. Here's what he said. I said that humans are the most played race, and characters with feats are in the minority. In contrast, the website story states that I said most characters are humans without feats. Not exactly right, or not quite right. I also didn't say anything about a character's background being more important than the character's class. So that's just Jeremy, clarifying. But anyway, so the two interesting pieces of data here are most D&D players, and by most it could be 51%. That doesn't mean 90% are playing human characters. And then also a majority of D&D characters don't use feats. So that's kind of the interesting takeaway from here. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, what you pull away from those two data points essentially should be there's a lot of people new to D&D playing now.
Yeah.
Right? Like, feats add a level of complexity to the game, which somebody new to the game may not be ready for, and the GM may not want to have them deal with. And then humans are obviously the easiest of the races in D&D to relate to, so it would make sense for you to play human as your first character. It's like, oh, how do I do this? What do I do?
Yeah, just be a human. It's the easiest. Plus, you get +1 to everything.
Exactly. They're the simplest race to play too.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, so there's a whole game balance discussion that could happen there, but I'm not, because I want to talk about Mist of Akuma and Imperial Matchmaker. What I'm going to do now, Mike, is I'm going to get us to a break, and when we get back, we're going to talk about Mist of Akuma and what you're doing with Imperial Matchmaker. We'll come back on Shane Plays Geek Talk.
Comic book lovers, visit thewildstars.com today. From the mind of author and comic book industry expert Michael Tierney, it's not just a comic book, it's a comic book novel. The Wild Stars is sci-fi and so much more. Learn the explanations behind UFOs and space gods. This isn't the Twilight Zone. This is the region of the Milky Way galaxy known as the Wild Stars. We guarantee you've never read anything like it. The complete comic book novel took 20 years to tell, with one reviewer noting, the story of the Wild Stars stretches ambitiously across space and time, from small-town murders to the destruction of planets, with every event given multiple layers of meaning. If you haven't read The Wild Stars, you're missing out. Visit thewildstars.com today. The die is cast. Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions. Castles and Crusades is the original, easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.
Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays Geek Talk, a journey into the things we love. I'm joined by RPG author and game designer Mike Myler, who is not only the new editor for the EN5ider, which is a Patreon-supported periodical, I guess, where you get all kinds of cool monthly 5e edition content for your 5e game, but he's also the mastermind behind the Mists of Akuma 5e campaign setting, and he's about to launch a new Kickstarter, which brings some cool content to Mists of Akuma. So real quick, for the people that may just be joining us by radio, Mike, give me that. You gave me a beautiful elevator pitch for Mists of Akuma towards the beginning of the show. Can you give me that again?
Sure. It's an Eastern fantasy noir steampunk campaign setting, like in that order. So you can pull the steampunk out if you really have to.
Okay. So, yeah, it's not Oriental Adventures per se, but somebody could kind of tailor it that way if they wanted. It
would be a scarier version of Oriental Adventures.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just remember... go ahead. Now, go ahead.
Well, so if you're familiar with D&D, think like Ravenloft plus Edo era Japan plus Warhammer 40,000, and
nice.
That's pretty much it.
All right, I love it. I mean, I have a fondness in my heart for the original AD&D Oriental Adventures book, because I got it when it first came out, and it had like ninja, and it had like grenades you could throw, and all this kind of cool stuff. So I'd probably go look at it with my eyes, with older eyes now, and go, oh, what this is, maybe we could do better than this, but. Back then, I loved it, and even though I never played any of the content, it had a special place in my heart just from reading the source book. Okay, but tell us. Okay, so Mist of Akuma is a Ravenloft plus Edo era Japan, which I think you said about the time that the United States started encountering Japan in the 1800s, and then steampunk, and what now you successfully kickstarted this setting. Which shows you right there their support for the setting. And now you're kickstarting Imperial Matchmaker, which is an adventure path, I believe, if I remember right, for level 6 through 10. And then it also comes with some pre-gen characters.
All right, let's roll back just slightly a little bit. So it's a good thing to mention the colonization because that's a like central point of the setting. Like 160 or 170 years ago, by the time Imperial Matchmaker happens to go inside the setting, these like lightning-powered ships show up from across the edge of the world, subjugate Soberin, draft all their peoples into this distant conflict called the War of Kaio. It lasts for about 100 years, and then suddenly, like, no communication makes it across the Great Divide. Everybody just kind of isolates themselves.
Okay.
And the occupation by the foreigners lasts another 50 years. The emperor like reclaims the throne, and they have maybe 10 years of peace. And then the Mists of Akuma show up, and the Mists of Akuma are these supernatural fog that strips virtue from people, and when they're completely corrupt, it transforms them into a Dedo Oni, which are very much like zombies, but just a little bit smarter and way faster.
Is that not actually a Japanese thing? Yeah, I mean, is that not actually like an actual lore?
Oh well,
not the mist, but that kind of smart zombie thing.
Oh, I don't know. There's a lot of different Oni.
Okay.
There's a lot of different Oni, man. And that's just Oni are specifically from Japan, but like each and we drew from a lot of different Eastern cultures as we were making the bestiary part of the book. But yeah, they each have like, you know, their own monsters that can range into the dozens or even hundreds if you're looking over in China.
Okay. So
but
yeah, go ahead.
And the Imperial Matchmaker is itself a mega adventure that's for characters from 4th to 10th level. So it's like one long narrative that all takes place in the Imperial capital of Sanbaoshi. But I do also have an adventure path that is part of this Kickstarter because I have, 6 adventures that are already done, and I have like, copies of them at my house and stuff.
Right.
And I want to redevelop them into an adventure path. What's the difference there being that an adventure path is like several segmented adventures that you could take out, and it'd be its own thing.
Okay.
Just run that one adventure. But a mega adventure it's you got to do the whole thing.
Gotcha. And for people who aren't familiar, if you mainly play D&D, or whatever flavor of D&D, an adventure path is something that Pathfinder kind of introduced, where it's usually, if I understand correctly, 6 separate adventure modules that form together to kind of do a campaign. Like, each Star Wars is its own movie, but Star Wars is its own movie franchise, right? Yeah.
Think of it like that.
Yeah. So, and I learned that, I'm learning more about Pathfinder, and I could have made a news item, of course, about the Pathfinder 2nd edition is coming, but I wanted to keep it more about.
So stoked.
Yeah. I wanted to keep it more about 5e. If you're a big Pathfinder guy, I want to do a show on Pathfinder and 2nd edition and all that. So keep that in your back pocket. Maybe we can do something like that. There's so much cool geek stuff out there. It's hard for me to cover everything. Okay, so with Imperial Matchmaker, are there also not some pre-generated characters that are part of
we didn't even talk about the free stuff.
Yeah.
So whenever I do a Kickstarter, and this is my 7th Kickstarter, I always offer a lot of free stuff because I'm a big believer in free. Because I'm from a blue-collar family, so free stuff has always been very important.
Free stuff is good.
Yeah.
All right.
This time we have 9 free PDFs. So there's one that's just got like, about 40 pages out of the core book to like just give your players and be like, okay, here's the cultural tenets of the world. Here's, some basic, character options and stuff. And then there are 8 other free PDFs that each detail one different iconic character. So the 3rd book we're making for the Kickstarter is a soft cover that has builds for all these iconic characters from 3rd to 10th level. And then if the people, if your group wants to make their own characters and they don't want to use these pre-generated iconics, then there are rules for like having extra stuff for these characters, for your play group. And then you use the iconics as rivals throughout either the adventure path or Imperial Matchmaker.
Nice. Okay. So if I'm understanding that correctly, the characters that you use in these adventures or this adventure path need to have a little something extra to them.
I mean, they should. It's not an easy. It's difficult. I mean, Mists of Akuma is already a really difficult world. You're not supposed to have. If you get any victory, it should be Pyrrhic, which is to say that like it shouldn't be a total victory. Like maybe you save the day, but somebody very important dies,
right?
Or multiple people that are very important die, or maybe there's only one survivor. That sounds more like Mists of Akuma. You save the day, but there's only like one survivor.
Right.
Like there you go.
So it's hard to. There's always an element of despair or something.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not like, a glorious, the king rewards you, you live happily. No.
Yeah, none of that. We'll have none of that. So what now? You kickstarted Mist of Akuma. It was successful. What has been your feedback from Mist of Akuma? From people that are playing it or whatever. Are people? Is it striking?
Everybody, folks love it. Honestly, I've been really pleased with the feedback. We were a little worried in development because so Japanese is a really funny language, and that's the main one we use for naming convention. And I don't want to get too meta here, but if you're just naming one or two things, making up a fake language is great and works fine. If you're naming like 300 things, it'll start to become very apparent that you have a nonsense language, and whatever you're making will lose clarity.
Okay.
So we use Japanese as our predominant translation tool for naming stuff. And we almost called the one city Chikan, which, Chikan actually is how you pronounce it. But I thought that this just meant like windy and blowy because it's a city all about fans that, they use the fans to tell the Mist of Akuma and so on. Mm-hmm. And then somebody back in the project was like, hey, do you know all the definitions for that word? And I was like, no. And he's like, okay, well, you should learn them. And so then I did. And I found out that Chikan has several meanings, one of which is like dirty old men that grab girls on the subway.
Okay.
Which is insane that there's a word for that.
Right.
But so then we had like an academic professor in Japan who's a native English speaker, and then his class of Japanese students read over the whole book and make sure that we weren't doing something crazy and offensive like that.
Right.
Because there's another really popular article this week on the N-World about using other cultures when you're making RPG settings, and ultimately you should try to be responsible when you're doing it.
Right.
Otherwise, you'll name a city after old perverts.
After an old guy that likes it. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And Japanese is also, I lived in Japan for 2 years in the 90s. And it's Japanese is a very structured but formal language in the sense that there's like 6 different levels of formality depending on who you are and who you're talking to and what time of day it is and all of stuff. I was in a restaurant one time, and the guys I was with spoke some Japanese, and they were talking to the server, and they used accidentally, not on purpose, the wrong level of formality with her, and she got very upset. So it's just to add even more, complexity. Not any one level of the language can have its own idiosyncrasies like what you just ran into, but then there's all these different levels of formality. People don't know how sloppy English is. English is so sloppy, and you can make it do whatever you want at any given time. So what, like if let's say, and I do want to talk about the Imperial Matchmaker that you're doing, but let's say I'm like, oh, this Mist of Akuma sounds really cool, and I missed out on the Kickstarter. Can I go get Mist of Akuma, and since it's 5e compatible, can I lift like races and classes out of it and drop it over in my 5e game?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And if you're going to do that, then you should get the Adventurer's Handbook for Mist of Akuma, because that's where I pulled all the mechanics to.
Okay. All right. So, and since the Kickstarter is now over, do I go to RPG Now? Where would I get Mist of Akuma?
If you check out my website, there's a little at MikeMyler.com. There's a little tab at the top that says campaign settings. You can find it through there. If you just look up Mist of Akuma RPG, you should be able to find it on Drive-Thru RPG.
Okay.
You can't get the original black and white prints from the Kickstarter originally because the printer, after, I don't know, gosh, I have like 4 or 5 print proofs here. After I finally got it right, a year passed, and I started getting messages from customers saying that their books were messed up because the printer changed some setting. So now it's all color. All color, no more black and white. Because it was perfect the way it was, but if I can't get it to reliably do that, then
right.
But it's still a great book, and a lot of people from the original Kickstarter have been like, "Oh man, I really want the color version." And I'm like, "Great, pledge the Imperial Matchmaker." There's a pledge level though; it makes it real cheap. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, now is it possible to still get a hard copy without like using RPG Now's print on demand feature? Or is there a way to do that?
No, you can get it from other stores, but it'll still end up coming from Lightning Source, which is the print on demand.
Okay, well,
supplier.
To quote to quote Seinfeld, there's nothing wrong with print on demand at all. I was just curious if there was if you had a hard copy inventory out there anywhere. So.
Oh no, I didn't. I offer vouchers because after my second campaign setting Kickstarter, I took actual orders for that one.
Right.
And the price on ink and paper changed on me between taking the money and delivering the rewards.
Yep.
So that nearly bankrupted me.
That's why doing everything digital and doing everything print on demand is so much better, because you don't get stuck. Yeah, I mean, the margin on RPG stuff is really thin to begin with. So especially,
and then I have this terrible tendency where, like we just yesterday actually we just released the Book of Exalted Darkness.
Yep.
Which is also 5th edition. We're not talking about it here, but it's great. It's Decopunk.
I see that on your website. Yeah.
Yeah. The cover is amazing.
Yeah, it looks really cool.
But
yeah.
Right, that was supposed to be like 200 pages, but once I really got into the real thick of it, I was like, oh, this is 2 books. So it's 414 pages, and there's no way I could have done that if I had taken physical rewards right at the start.
Gotcha.
But $4 extra for each individual person is a lot less than me paying $4 hundreds of times.
Right. No doubt. Yeah. And again, the margins on RPG stuff is so slim, especially when it's a small, venture like what you're doing, or smaller.
The print run is going to start at $11,000.
Oh, okay, cool. We'll talk. So we're about to take another break, but when we come back, I want to talk specifically about the reward levels for Imperial Matchmaker. But I did want to give a shout out to your website. I've gone there a couple of times recently preparing to talk with you, and there's something you do really cool. They're called hyperscores. And
Hyperscore Marvel.
Yeah, and you take like Marvel characters or whatever, and you make Pathfinder characters out of them. So I think that's really neat. I wanted to give a shout out for that. So
there's the people actually really dug the Warhammer 40K hack for D&D 5e.
Yeah.
And Hyperscore Marvel up to number 20 something was also for 5e. But it was just too hard to use this like super system that I have for Pathfinder and 5e. Like 5e1 is sort of like maxed out around X-Man power level.
Okay.
And people were asking for Avengers, and so it just wasn't working.
Neat. Okay, well, cool. Yeah, and I mean, Pathfinder is more flexible with character creation, without a doubt. That's one of the things I hear about it a lot. So, okay, got to do this. Got to get us to another break. When we come back, I want to talk about, what are the reward levels on your Imperial Matchmaker Kickstarter, and then unfortunately, we'll have to wrap the show. Radio goes so quick. Time is a predator that stalks us all our lives. But here we go. Some goblins are your friends. Game Goblins is Central Arkansas's premier retailer of Magic the Gathering, Warhammer 40K, board game, card games, RPGs, miniatures, and hobby accessories. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. That's 501-224-GAME or gamegoblins.com. Conveniently located at 1121 South Bowman, right on the corner of Bowman and Canis in West Little Rock, and staffed by friendly employees, Game Goblins has expanded their store size, and there's plenty of room for exciting inventory and tables for play space. You'll like that space because Game Goblins has gaming events every day of the week. For all of your gaming needs, I heartily recommend Game Goblins. Make sure to check out their customer loyalty program that rewards you based on your actual purchases. Game Goblins earns your business and keeps it. First-time customers mention Shane Plays and receive $10 off your purchase of $50 or more. Tell them Shane Plays sent you. Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays Geek Talk. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. We're joined by Mike Myler, who is a tabletop RPG game author and designer. He successfully kickstarted recently, or not. When did that finish kickstarting your Mist of Akuma campaign?
2 years ago now.
2 years. So 2 years ago, you successfully kickstarted Mist of Akuma 5e campaign setting, which is a Ravenloft, Edo era Japan, Warhammer 40K, steampunk 5e campaign setting that you said that, the feedback you've gotten has been, you're like, wow, we're really happy that how much people are enjoying this. And now you have a Kickstarter for where you're kickstarting some content for Mist of Akuma, including an adventure path for characters 4th to 10th level. And then it's also got, you said 9 free PDFs, including some characters pre-generated. There was a word you used for it, like prestigious characters or something like that. Iconics. There you go. Iconics. So I wanted to ask you real quick. I don't think there's a major connection here, but Imperial Matchmaker was evidently one of the things from L5R, Legends of the Five Rings. What other than, is there, if somebody was a big Legends of the Five Rings fan, are they going to find anything? And if not, that's fine. But are they going to find anything in Mist of Akuma that they would like?
Well, I know that a lot of people who are Legends of the Five Rings back to the Kickstarter and enjoy Mists of Akuma, but
Okay.
I mean, my interaction with Legends of the Five Rings is extremely limited, and mostly just to be like, oh wow, that's great artwork.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, Mists of Akuma seems to be more of a traditional. You've mixed a lot of other stuff together.
There's this incredible tradition of ukiyo woodblock printing in Japan.
Right.
So there's hundreds and hundreds of immaculate artworks preserved in the public domain, and I picked out the best ones, and they're in the book.
All right. Well, L5R, I never actually played the RPG. I played the card game way back in the day, like in the 90s. So anyway, okay. So we got about 4 minutes here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Imperial Matchmaker Kickstarter and like your reward levels and whatnot?
Sure. So there are 3 things offered by the Kickstarter predominantly. The Mega Adventure Imperial Matchmaker, 4th to 10th level, all happens in the Imperial capital of Sanbashi. The Trade War Adventure Path, which is like 3rd to 10th level, and is 6 adventures narratively connect together into one hardcover book.
Okay.
And then
okay. Nice.
Yeah, it's the second hardcover. And then the softcover is the Imperial Matchmaker Guest, which has all the iconics at builds from 3rd to 10th level, which you can use as your player characters or as rivals for the player characters.
Okay, and you go live on what date? I know it's a couple of days.
Monday, March 19th.
Monday, March 19th. So if you're listening by radio, you got 2 days for this to come out. There's actually a Mists of Akuma Facebook page, and there's a Mists of Akuma Imperial Matchmaker launch event. Go check out. If you're listening by podcast, it'll probably already be live, and if you're listening on Krypton Radio, and the rewards go anywhere from $5, which will get you PDFs and the iconics and etc., all the way up to $1,000 or more, which you become part of the bride's family. I would say most people are, they're going to look at the where's the first level that gets you the $30 level. You get the everything by PDF, the Imperial Matchmaker by PDF. And then you get a print voucher at $40 or more, et cetera, et cetera. What's the first level where they get the actual hardback?
Well, I'm not doing hardbacks until $250.
$250. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, like you get a voucher for the hardback, and the vouchers are out cost, which means that you pay for like the ink, the glue, the paper, and the shipping.
Okay. Well, that's cool. Very cool, man. So, I'm interested. I love, as I said a million times on the show, we are in a tabletop gaming renaissance. And, and part of it is because of Kickstarter. Part of it is RPG Now. Part of it is just because of the success of 5e. Nobody can argue that 5e has been a massive success. And, and then when you got stuff like Critical Role, getting people out there watching D&D. I've had a lot of people show up to my game that I run at a store, like their only intro to D&D was watching it online. And now they want to play it. So I'm tickled pink that you're getting to do this.
They're playing Humans Without Feats.
Humans Without Defeats. So I don't know how they walk, but they're humans without defeats. I did want to ask real quick, as a designer, publishing stuff, I've heard from other people that a lot of times when you kickstart a module, the interest isn't there like it is for a set. Are you worried about that at all? Have you heard that kind of thing? Is this... is that something you took into account, or you're just like, we're going to do it and it's going to be great and it's going to fund?
I don't know. This time I'm actually really excited because most of my Kickstarters are a lot of promises. And this time, I've got everything done and stuff that I can send away immediately.
Well,
so
I think what'll help you is the 9 free PDFs on top of this. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Douglas Cole, who did Dungeon Grappling, which was well received. He did a 5e adventure for Dungeon Grappling, and it just didn't get the response. It's still funded, but it wasn't the same amount of excitement, that the original Dungeon Grappling. And I've heard from other people too. So I was just curious. Hey man, I got to do this to us. I don't know if you've listened to the show before, but I have the bad joke of the week every week. Okay. I don't know if you signed the waiver or not, but here we go. And by the way, good luck with Mists of Akuma, Imperial Matchmaker. People go check it out. Okay, here we go. Why does the USA need so much defense?
I don't know. Why does the USA need so much defense?
It only has one constitution.
Oh.
All right. And here's a bonus one. I started walking around without shoes, and it sort of became a hobbit. Mike, it's been a pleasure. Stay in touch, man. And I'm going to keep an eye on your Kickstarter. Folks, we'll catch you next week on Shane Plays Geek Talk.
You got me turning up and turning down, I'm turning in, I'm turning right, I'm turning Japanese, I think I'm turning Japanese, I really think so. Turning Japanese, I think I'm turning Japanese, I really think so. Turning Japanese, I think I'm turning Japanese, I really think so. Turning Japanese, I think I'm turning Japanese, I really think so.
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.